Hello everybody, good to have you on the program. It's that time of the night where we engage with you on matters that affect you, matters that affect your family, matters that affect your community. Tonight, did South Africa send weapons to Russia with love? We'll find out. It's topical. Hey, a very good evening to you, South Africa, those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical. Our digital audience, please, good to see them on the program. Just remember, our digital audience is made up of members of the public who have expressed a keen interest in our topic of discussion. So we invite them to be part of the show. They, like those watching from home, they want answers. So that's where we come in. That's our job, to bring in the experts, or guests as we call them, onto the program to get you the answers. Many of our digital audience members, by the way, just want to observe the show from that vantage point, and you'll agree it's a pretty good vantage point, if I do say so myself. But be that as it may, I have every intention to hear from everybody tonight, time permitting, of course. What normally helps is that if you raise your virtual hand, which gives me, as well as the producers sitting in the control room, an indication that you want to ask a question or give a comment. So please do that. Get those virtual hands up, and I'll do my very best to get you on air. Just outlining the differences, between our guests and the digital audience. Now that we're on the same page, let's turn it. The United States ambassador to South Africa, Ruben E. Brichetti, speaking out the allegations, the arming of Russia by South Africa via a vessel that was docked in Simonstown, calling it fundamentally unacceptable. The ambassador saying that they are confident that weapons were loaded onto the vessel, and he was even willing to bet his life on the accuracy of that assertion. Then we hear that the Department of International Relations and Cooperation démarged the ambassador. Démarge is just a fancy word used in the diplomatic circles, meaning a course of action or something along those lines. And we are told, right, that Ambassador Brichetti admitted that he crossed the line and apologized unreservedly to the government of South Africa, as well as the people of South Africa. Question, right? What exactly is he apologizing for? Is it the manner in which he communicated his concerns? Or is it that he's recanting his statement? Because if there is no merit in what he is saying, then why is an independent inquiry still on the cards to look into these allegations? We will discuss, which leads us to the question of the week. And we ask you, simple question, what do you make of the SA Russia weapons saga? As always, it's a simple question, comes with complicated answers. Follow me as I give you context. Very important when we're dealing with such issues. Geopolitics, megaphone diplomacy. Heard that term? Does it apply in this regard? We will ask the better minds onto the program as well. How would you describe the ambassador's assertions? Let us know at It's Topical SABC. Perspective coming up. Now time for your roundup. All right, President Cyril Ramaphosa has warned that should government implement the North Gauteng High Court ruling that exempts hospitals and clinics, schools and police stations from load shedding, the grid will collapse. He was answering questions in the National Assembly.
Ideally, I would personally want all those hospitals and schools to be exempt. But from an engineering point of view, I am told that it is practically impossible to do. So now we are faced with a court judgment and the impracticality of it all. So the process of then approaching the court through an appeal process is to bring to bear a better understanding so that there can be understanding of the engineering aspects and the impracticality aspects of it all. And by the way, it is not being done in an arrogant way, in a way where we're trying to say second guess the court, it is actually being done to ensure that we save the grid, because otherwise it would collapse if we were to implement that judgment in full.
Well, this is the debate that has, I guess, divided opinions on the streets of South Africa. Here's what some of you had to say.
I do agree that such places have to be exempted because, I mean, in terms of school, the kids can be interrupted in terms of the time that is allocated for schooling.
There should be grace given to your hospitals and the police and schools and everything, because they are very important, and we need electricity, especially in schools and all that. But at the end of the day, the whole country needs electricity to survive.
If the electricity goes on and off, 8 to stage 8, people will be dying in the hospital. Kids at school won't be able to go to internet, because now we're talking about internet to schools. And other thing, at police station, how can the police work if there's no electricity?
All those operations that are taking place in the hospital, they need electricity. So I don't think there must be load shedding in any hospital or police station.
All right, that was the other big topical story of the week. Let's get back to our main story. Let's give you a sense of what we know and why it matters. And for that, we turn, as always, to the magic wall to give you context about what we're talking about. The ambassador. Who is the U.S. ambassador to South Africa? His name is Reuben E. Brigety II, PhD, nominated by the U.S. President Joe Biden on the 10th of February, 2022. But he is not the story. The allegations that he made is the story. The SABC has been trying, by the way, to get him onto the program. We will let you know when we win in that regard. Let's talk about some of these allegations. That is the story, right? On Thursday, the ambassador said that he was confident that a Russian ship took on board weapons from Simonstown base in December. And thereafter, this is what we know that happened. Now, during a question and answer session in the National Assembly, DA leader John Steenhuisen asked President Ramaphosa to confirm the reports about the weapons being loaded on Lady R, destined for Russia. And this is what the president had to say. President Ramaphosa is saying, we are all aware of the news of the Lady R. The whole matter is being looked into. Allow the process to reach fruition. In time, we will talk about it. And we know subsequently, the presidency issued a statement, right, saying in a recent engagement between the South African delegation and the US officials, the Lady R matter was discussed. And there was an agreement that an investigation will be allowed to run its course, and that the US intelligence services will provide whatever evidence in their possession. We will wait and see. Also, this is what we know with regards to what the presidency has said. They rebutted the accusations, saying it's disappointing that the US ambassador had adopted a counterproductive public posture that undermines the understanding reached on the matter and the very positive and constructive engagements between the two delegations. Then the apology. The Department of International Relations and Cooperation expressed the South African government's utter displeasure, quote, with the US ambassador's conduct and statements alleging that South Africa sold weapons to Russia. And we're told, following that meeting, as I mentioned earlier, Ambassador Reuben E. Brigety admitted that he crossed the line and apologized unreservedly to the government and the people of South Africa. Ambassador Brigety, by the way, later tweeted that he had a chance to correct any misimpressions left by his public remarks. We also heard from, this weekend, the National Security Advisor, Professor Sidney Mufamadi, saying that South Africa is actively non-aligned in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. He went on to say that South Africa is anti-war and will be calculated in its efforts to bring wars to an end. So that's basically the state of play. What about megaphone diplomacy, right? You probably heard this term of late. One dictionary defines it as a practice of making strong statements in order to make another country do what you want. Is that what we're seeing here? Or are we missing the point completely? What about the issue of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or many know it as AGOA? It's a United States Trade Act. It's a legislation that enhances market access to US for qualifying sub-Saharan African countries. Is there a risk in our participation in AGOA perspective coming up? It's all about diversity of opinions and understanding. That's what this program is all about. I want to remind you now about the allegations that provoked this uproar, both locally and abroad, when the US ambassador to South Africa, Ruben E. Brigidi, accused the country of supplying Russia with ammunition as well as weapons amid the Ukraine war. This is what he had to say.
Amongst the things we noted were the docking of the Russian cargo ship Lady R in Simonstown between December 6th and December 8th, 2022, which we are confident uploaded weapons, ammunition onto that vessel in Simonstown as it made its way back to Russia.
This suggests that the ANC government is actively arming Russian soldiers and
order, honorable members,
who are
please.
murdering and maiming innocent people, not only in Ukraine, but also across the African continent. It's been half a year now since the scandal of the Lady R docking in Simonstown broke, and I find it inconceivable that a president worth his salt would not have been briefed on the situation by now.
We have called for the removal, and he must just pack his bags and go back home. Because you cannot have a person who just get excited and start to be accusing a sovereign country in its own shores to say, no, this is what has happened.
Now, surprise, surprise, the American ambassador comes to South Africa back and he accuses us. He accuses us, he launches an attack against us, which we found quite, distasteful. Because at a diplomatic level, you don't do things like that. But in any event, our Minister of International Relations had a meeting with him yesterday, expressed South Africa's disappointment in him, and he then apologized.
All right, so that's what the leaders have to say. This program, as you know, is all about what you have to say as well, as you engage these leaders. To a Word on the Street feature, where we give you a voice on the issues that affect you. We spoke to the residents of Randburg, north of Johannesburg, about the accusations made by the US ambassador to South Africa. And this is what you had to say.
These are still allegations, but if they can be proved to be true, then I think it will have a negative impact on South Africa, especially the economic ties between South Africa and the United States, because United States is one of South Africa's main economic partner.
If the allegation is real, they should prove it. And on the other hand of South Africa, I would say that it will affect the economy because America is a superpower.
I think it will affect in a big way because already the rand is going down as we speak, just because of these allegations. So what's next? The next thing is the US will try to stretch us on the other side. The Russians are also going to stretch us on the other side. And we try to be neutral, but the leaders are not showing that neutrality in this case.
I feel like the West should stop using their influence over what Africans do in Africa.
The US is just something else. SA cannot supply weapons to Russia. It's supposed to be the other way around, Russia supplying weapons.
I don't think South Africa can get involved. I don't want them to get involved with all this thing of Russia and these things. We don't know South Africa like that.
I don't have a problem if maybe the relationship can break down, but the only thing that we have to support the countries that supported us since the apartheid regime.
All right, we've got lots to discuss, little time. Let's get straight to it. We've got a number of guests, the better minds, as they call them, to give us some perspective on the moment, as well as what we're dealing with, geopolitics, serious allegations. One of the people that we spoke to on the streets of Johannesburg mentioned the issue of neutrality. What are the dangers of being neutral? We will discuss. Let's bring in some of our guests. Professor Siphamandla Zondi from UJ, Director of the Institute for Pan-African Thought and Conversation. Kobus Marais, the DA Shadow Minister for Defence and Military Veterans. We have a host of digital audience as well. We're going to get to them in a short while. Thank you very much indeed, all of you, for contributing to this topic. Important indeed. Professor Zondi, to you first. How would you describe the assertions made by the US Ambassador to South Africa?
The content of the presentation should shock all of us, should worry all of us if there might have been a loading of weapons or offloading of weapons from that vessel that would have not been declared. It is not that you supply weapons to someone, to another country, that's a problem. But it's whether you do it in line with the National Conventional Committee, Committee, that is coordinating committee that coordinates the sale of arms to other countries, so that it is done in terms of the user certificates and all of that. So that part is, we say the message would be a huge revelation that requires that there must be an investigation.
Yeah.
But the second part about the ambassador holding a press conference in a country where he's hosted, where he has direct communication to the president, to the minister, to the DG, to the DDG, and to chief director. I found that very distasteful. It is very impolitic. It's very undiplomatic. It breaks the diplomatic etiquette we know all over the world. It is unbecoming, and it smacks of arrogance. And
would you define that as what people are terming megaphone diplomacy?
Intelligence in the public, then you destroy the diplomatic tradition completely.
Yeah, I wonder if Prof, you can hear me. I was just wondering if you would define that as what some are referring to as megaphone diplomacy.
It is called megaphone diplomacy because diplomacy is usually through the formal channel. Through the normal channel to the highest decision makers. Right. When you then pick up a megaphone and speak in public, it is designed really to shape public opinion or to create a storm, not to manage relations.
Right. Kobus Marais, the next step now, we're told, is that there's going to be an independent inquiry led by a retired judge. A whole inquiry into looking into these allegations, Mr. Marais, is that the best approach to get answers as quick as possible?
Absolutely not. It is not necessary in my view. Remember, even before the Lady R arrived in South Africa, the Americans officially informed South Africa of the Lady R that it is on its way, about its cargo, and that it will be a problem, if they unload and load in South Africa. We know that, the import and export of munitions, the collective word, are never done via Simonstown Naval Base. That is a naval base. That is not an official point of entry. So one must ask the question, so why did they not port in Table Bay, Kuga, Durban, for instance? The only thing is, remember all the agencies, the South African agencies, Customs and Excise, National Treasury, South African Police, Home Affairs, Agricultural, everybody is at the official point of entry. And the only thing can be that they very well knew that whatever the Lady R wanted to offload and reload will not be successful at an official point of entry, being commercial portnet ports. So obviously, and remember, the naval base as a national strategic key point is not being used by commercial vessels. So we also know that the Lady R was on the Agulhas Bank for about 4 days. Then it was escorted into False Bay and Simonstown by 2 naval vessels, 1 frigate and the new multi-mission inshore patrol vessel. That will never happen if there's not authority and approval on a very, very high level. We also know that ammunition was offloaded, about the equivalent of 7 containers.
How do we know that, Mr. Marais? How do we know that?
Well, the minister and everybody that has spoken has basically conceded to that. I will explain why. In 2019 and 2020, import permit was approved for the import of what they refer to as rounds and shells from the Russian Federation. And if you look at the quantities that they are giving per order, and you go and calculate that and see how many fit into a container, then you see that's roughly 7 containers. I know, who was the logistical company who transported the containers, and we know that on the Saturday or the Friday night, it arrived at an ammunition depot. So ammunition was offloaded, no doubt about that. It was old orders as they were claiming. The question is whether those permits were still valid and legal. We also know that something was loaded onto the vessel. It seems it was certainly not apples and pears or cool drinks. It was something that was loaded onto the vessel during the midnight hours of the Thursday night. And we know that, the rumors is going around, and from sources, it has been told that ammunition is certainly part of what was loaded, if not all was loaded. So we know that.
And Mr. Marais, you were willing to obviously give the Commission or the Independent Inquiry all this information that you have, yeah?
Obviously, this is in the interest of South Africa. Remember, I've been very vocal and out there right from that first Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
I knew what was happening. I got my intel, and it was verified, and it was confirmed, and everything adds up. So what the ambassador has done, he has basically blown this whole thing open so that it is open for everybody to know. Obviously, I know that, and from my experiences, the Americans is onto something. They have got possibly the best intel capabilities and observation
because
capabilities.
I was listening to Zain Dango, Director General at DIRCO, saying that regarding these allegations around Lady R, when they were in the US, they weren't presented with concrete evidence from the US, but maybe that will be supplied during the inquiry. Jody Bouchard, these are serious allegations. Jody said is an academic dealing with this field, international relations academic, focus on Russian geopolitics. If this is the case, and it is found that South Africa did supply Russia with arms, what's the possible consequences here? If you can unmute, Jody.
Is that me?
Jody, let's there we go.
Hi. Good evening, everybody. Well, we do understand that there will be a breach of the contract that we have in place, right, for sale of conventional weapons to Russia. But that remains to be seen at the moment, right? We understand that there has been some activity, so I don't want to speculate, but I mean, if it's looking at the worst case scenario, then definitely there would be some sort of penalization. I wouldn't say sanctions at present because that's very strong, but those trade agreements would have to be reevaluated that we have with the AGOA agreement.
I wonder how much this has to do. Let's get Professor Zondi. Professor, you're shaking your head. Do you disagree with Jody?
I'm just thinking here. I heard Mr. Marais say that there was a permit. If what he says is true, there was a permit, then there's nothing untoward about exporting by a permit very illegally. The challenge was going to, if there was something being done to export arms illegally. That was the problem. Now it is found that in the end that there was export of weapons to Russia that have been ordered duly. Then there is no problem because there are no sanctions against Russia right now.
Yes.
There are US and EU sanctions, which means illegal sanctions, because the only structure that can impose international sanctions that we're all obligated to is the United Nations. Now, what it is there might be political implications of doing so, but there is no violation of any law or any decision that is formal.
Right.
As
Hello,
long as
can you hear me?
to South African
Go on, Mr. Marais. Just clarify the issue of the permit.
May I just qualify in terms of the permit? Those are import permits that I was referring to, not export permit. The only application, although I've heard that there was a denial that there was any applications for permits. Obviously, you know, from the NCACC reports, the annual reports, we have got the facts. That is what they give us as the Joint Standing Committee on Defence members. So we know what is in there. And if that is not the facts, then they've been lying to us. So we know that there was 2 import permits. It might have been lapsed. So whether it was still legitimate, that's another story. The only import permit, the only export permit that was granted was not for ammunition. That was more for technological stuff and radar and more. So it was nothing to do with ammunition per se. So if ammunition was loaded, that was done covertly, and that was then done illegally and you know, irregularly. So that, and I think that is the concern of what was loaded onto that vessel. They are not prepared to tell us that, and as long as they do not prepare to tell us that, I know for a fact that the minister has told me in December that she will only go public if she knows and that she has seen the documents and she knows that nothing has been done wrong or illegal.
You talk about the Minister of Defense?
Minister of Defense, and she has not gone on public, so one must assume that she has seen something that she was not very impressed with.
We did reach out.
I certainly do believe that she would have reported that to the president as the commander-in-chief. So they know exactly who was responsible for this transaction, who was the logistical company. So they can phone maybe 3 or 4 people maximum, and they know exactly.
We did invite the Minister of Defense onto the program. They said they're not going to do any interviews at this stage. Jody, you have your hand up. Jump in.
Sorry, and perhaps it's not been publicized because it is still a military installation, right? This is a naval port. There are massive national security implications. So I doubt that the full extent of the information that or the findings from the inquiry will ever be publicized, and that is understandable. So I would say that, and then past precedent does suggest that any of the trade we've done with Russia or the sales to Russia have been non-lethal weapons, right? So that would be the remit of, you know, surveillance equipment, non-lethal technology, and so forth. So we have to obviously exercise some sort of restraint before jumping to conclusions. And I'm not saying that we obviously know something did take place that evening, but there are a multitude of possibilities, many of which do not include government complicity. So I'm very hesitant to jump to the worst case scenario at this point.
Point taken. Billy Nyako, if you can unmute, POA leader. Let's get your take in terms of these allegations and what it's doing to South Africa's reputation on the world stage.
Thank you so much. I want to start off by apologizing for poor lighting. I'm stuck in load shedding. I'm one of the victims of ESCO. Okay, get back to your point. I've never seen arrogant ambassador in the history of global politics like the ambassador of US to South Africa. I mean, the statement he has uttered is unbecoming, uncalled for, and very, very, very distasteful. So there are diplomatic channels, obviously, that should be observed when 2 countries are having something that is uncommon between them. So I'm of the opinion that whatever that happened on that night remains a mystery, and there should be a proper way to engage the relevant authorities as to what has happened. So as party of action, I would say that we we pay the finest compliment to South African government for remaining neutral in Russian and Ukraine war, because obviously we are not perplexed by USA stance on this matter, because anything that moves in the country will be questioned by US, because I know that this country has to be punished one way or the other for not being part of the West in terms of reprimanding Russian invasion of Russia. So in conclusion, I will say that I can never under any circumstance be shocked by whatever that is being said by the ambassador. Ambassador has to be recalled because he does not respect the diplomatic relations between US and SA. So his credentials have to be questioned. He wants to go for personal glory based on the opposition party's reaction over that, which is the alliance, of course. Thank you very much.
Billy, thank you very much indeed. We'll have to see how this all unfolds. Freddie, I note your hand. We'll come back to you. We need to take a quick break. I wonder how much this has to do with the issue of what's happening in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, and that of the global balance of power. How do you draw the line between those two? We will discuss next. Welcome back. We're talking about the issue of the allegations by the U.S. ambassador to South Africa regarding that South Africa supplied Russia with ammunition, with weapons. That's the allegations. Is there merit in terms of those allegations? Let's discuss with the better minds. The digital audience with us tonight. Let's get straight into it. Mkuseli, you had your hand up before the break. Let's get your take, if you can unmute.
Well, thank you very much, Blaine. I hope you can hear me now.
Loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Firstly, I would like to say that I'm not really moved by the allegations by the U.S. ambassador. I don't think those allegations are true, and that's number one. And number two, I was very disappointed in the response from our government by cowering to these baseless allegations, because we cannot spend millions of rand on something that is baseless and it's not based on any solid evidence, because all what we're hearing here is rumors. Even the guy or the man from the DA, Mr. I think Marais, he is not giving us anything that is solid other than rumors, because he's telling us that the minister said, but he's not referring to exactly at what point did the minister say that. So all I'm saying here is that this is just a preparation for the event that's coming up in August, the BRICS summit, so that South Africa must be under pressure to listen or do whatever the US wants. That's all I want to say.
Right.
Thank you.
Let's take Kubai. I apologize. Your first name is cutting off on my screen. Kubai? If you can unmute. All right, it seems that we're having an issue there. Let's take Lucky first, and then we'll try to get back to Mr. Kubai. Lucky?
Yes, thank you, Blaine. I think the conundrum we find ourselves in as the country speaks much to the manner in which our foreign policy or our international relation has been structured. You cannot have such a confusing foreign policy where you want to please everyone and you don't find yourself being conflicted at some stages. Because the manner in which we have dealt with issues like the conflict in Ukraine and Russia, because we are cagey on putting our colors to the mast. And I don't think that is the way the country should have dealt with. And coming to this Lady R talked around December, and if I remember very well, there were reports in the media that the transaction happened pre-COVID, so it's just a conclusion of a transaction that happened pre-COVID, that the minister was quoted as saying that. And with the behavior of the USA ambassador, I think the United States is used to undermining other countries. Not long ago, they issued a terrorist alert about an imminent terrorist attack that's going to happen in Sandton, and there was no reprimand for that. And I think they are used to doing these kind of things, which is totally out of order. But in conclusion, I think the confusion between the ANC, the party, and the government itself, it is sending us into a collision course in the international relations sphere, because the ANC resolved that they are going east, but at the same time the government is still having a relationship with the West, and that is not going to work. It's a recipe disaster.
All right, Lucky, thank you very much indeed. Let's try Kubai before we go to Emmanuel. Jody, I note your hand. Let's try you one more time, sir. Mr. Kubai. Nah, it seems that we're having an issue with his sound. Emmanuel, your take. Emmanuel, if you can unmute, go ahead.
Thank you for welcoming me. Yeah, I think I've unmuted. Do you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. The issue of Americans, I hope you hear me well.
Yes, loud
now.
and clear. Go ahead.
Americans, the issue which has been raised by the ambassador of America is very much, as a South African, it's baseless and it lacks facts. Why am I saying this? It is the very same American. If you remember in 2003, they are the very same people who accused Iraq. Today now it's South Africa. Not so long ago, they were talking about terrorist attack in Sandton. This year in March, the very same America were talking about civil unrest, whereby they encourage their counterparts to pile up. So Americans, they are very much arrogant and they want everything to go in their way. In this scenario, in this August, they are expecting that South Africa might withdraw from the BRICS summit, and that is not going to happen. It's not going to be their way. The Americans always, they want to see themselves first. Few weeks back, as South Africans, Sakau, including COSAT, they went to the U.S. embassy. What they received there was an anarchism, because they expected that the ambassador will be able to attend to their crisis. When they arrived there, they were told that we cannot attend your crisis because we are not sure of our security. Right. Those are Americans. So with Americans, it's all about them, not all about other countries. So they want to display their powers, even if it's unnecessary.
All right.
Thanks.
Emmanuel, thank you. Lena, I'm going to come to you next, but I just want to take Jody. Jody, I just want to premise my next question to you by saying that I've been hearing from both sides saying that, the United States as well as South Africa value this relationship, right? So I guess we need to handle this relationship in a delicate way. Ambassador Brigidi, with regards to AGOA, because this is a big talking point, right? He was saying that the existing legislation of AGOA, there is already a requirement that no recipient of AGOA privileges should take actions that are directly in contrast to the national security interests of the United States of America. Having said that, do you worry, standing from afar, looking in, that this is in jeopardy? AGOA, that is.
I do worry that it is in jeopardy, but I think that long term, we have undone probably decades of good bipartisan or I would say bilateral relations. And I think that's more important because that will then bleed into many other different agreements, whether it's security cooperation or whether it's trade, right? Whether it's investment. So I think that the relationship has sustained a lot of damage. And I'll tell you why. Because when we work on these relationships, we do so that we can afford our partner the benefit of the doubt when an incident of this nature occurs, right? We want to seek to resolve it in a way that mitigates the risk of diplomatic, economic, or reputational harm to one another. Yeah. And the ambassador's actions do not reflect that attitude. It was not a good faith act on his part. And I will have to believe that this is the most powerful country in the world. It was most definitely sanctioned by higher authorities. I do not believe that he just made a gaffe or acted on his own. So already that relationship, which is going to infiltrate into many different established partnerships that we have with the United States is in jeopardy. And two, one of the other, I think it was somebody mentioned that this was bad for the president to commit to an inquiry. I think it's very good. It shows goodwill on our part, although we've ultimately been wronged by this action, right? But we still are showing goodwill by doing the inquiry. We are also buying some time to recalibrate, right? We've got the summit coming up, and the inquiry will definitely be a medium-term operation. So we've now bought ourselves a few months just to kind of, repair what can be repaired ahead of August, but that is the primary consideration. So I hope that has, given you an answer to a broad answer, but definitely I think everything is at risk at this point.
Point taken indeed. Let's go to Lena now. And I must say that this is by far the best headgear that we've seen on It's Topical in a long time. You can put Lena up on full screen. Is she still there? Oh no. Did she disappear?
Yes.
There we go. Go on, Lena.
Yeah.
Let's get your take.
Yes. Good evening. Good evening. I'll say USA is undermining the global governance. I'm saying USA because there are other countries in the US that are not in agreement with what USA is doing. I think South Africa is a sovereign state on its own. It has a right to choose its own friends.
Correct.
Like USA has chosen Ukraine. We are part of BRICS. Russia's part of BRICS. So we rather remain neutral. We accept both trade of these two countries. But for the USA to bully South Africa, it's highly unacceptable. But for this ambassador to send him packing back to USA is still a waste of time. USA is up to something. Remember the issue of the embassy saying Sun will be bombed, and it was forcing the ICC was forcing South Africa to arrest.
Oh, we're battling with Lena's line.
Mr. Vladimir Putin, when he comes here in South Africa,
right. Okay, Lena, we're really struggling to hear you. It's probably got to do with the network. Billy, I note your hand. I just want to get Professor Zondi's take before I come to Billy. Prof, we heard that the ambassador Brigidi was saying that they respect South Africa's policy of neutrality and non-alignment. But in practice, your assessment, is South Africa non-aligned in terms of practice? Professor Zondi, to you.
Yes. South Africa is historically non-aligned in matters of this nature, and it has maintained that position there. My biggest challenge is that South Africa has been, up to this far, up to at least last week, has been passively non-aligned. Because non-aligned doesn't mean neutral. Non-aligned means you take a specific position on a matter, and that position is usually for peaceful settlement of conflict. That's non-aligned. You reject military solutions to conflict. And non-aligned then should have meant that South Africa would be seen in the past year or so talking to both sides and persuading them towards a negotiated settlement. What they have had was more passive non-alignment, and do very little to do this again. As a result, ordinary meetings, you had the US Secretary of State arrive, and then the Russian State arrive. Then we had that military exercise with the Russian.
Yes.
It can create an impression that you are no longer non-aligned, you are somewhat aligning. But that is because you are not actively doing what the president now done in the past couple of days by calling President Putin and then saying it's about to, today they were going to speak with President Zelensky to appeal to both sides that we need a negotiated settlement. If you don't do that, you will be seen as either aligned or just neutral, which is never good. And I must repeat, if what happened and what the ambassador was raising, in spite of the fact that his approach is unclear, if what he raised is true, and that if it is that it was illegal, then whoever is found by that inquiry to have done wrong needs to face the full might of the law, because we cannot also break our own laws.
Mr. Marais, just to pick up from where Prof. Zondi left off in terms of what the president is doing, or South Africa's stance. He said he spoke to President Putin. He's going to speak to the Ukrainian President Zelensky. And also, African leaders are coming together in order to forge a plan to help a negotiation get started. On paper, look, it looks good, right, on paper. But realistically, do you see this working?
No, I think, again, in theory, something might look good, and even on paper, because paper is very, very patient. Paper don't fight back and complain. But in reality, and I think what the Prof has said, I think to a large extent want to agree with him, because at least the perception is that that the government is not non-aligned; they are very much aligned. If they are not giving the same benefits and privileges and access to Ukraine as they're giving to Russia. Russia has been given with Exercise Mosey. They abused the opportunity for propaganda. China was much more subdued in their propaganda, but Russia was up in our face. They announced that they will launch the hypersonic missile, which apparently never was a plan, but they said that in their state broadcaster and newspapers. So we have given them kind of, the other day, which is never happening to other foreign missions, to make use of Waterkloof Air Force Base for diplomatic mail. They always use Lanseria or Tambo. Here we have a commercial aircraft, again under sanction, in the middle of the night, allowed to land at Waterkloof Air Force Base, and then depart a couple of hours later. So it seems like there's a preferential benefits and advantages to Russia. Like I've said, it seems like they come and go in our backyard as they are pleased, and that gives the impression that government is certainly on the side of Russia. They have criticized everybody but Russia.
All right,
so clearly, from outside, the perception supports the fact that they are fully behind Russia against Ukraine.
We've got about 2 minutes left on the program. Let's try Kobus first, and then Freeman hasn't had a chance, and then Billy. Kobus?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead. As brief as possible.
All right. Thank you so much. This is very interesting, that very serious, significant things are happening in South Africa's diplomatic calendar this year. The BRICS, summit being hosted here, the issues that are under discussion, such as the de-dollarization matter. You have a BRICS currency being, looked at, trading in each other's currencies being looked at, a whole host, of issues. New countries, applying to join the BRICS bloc. And so on. Right now, we're talking about something that is really speculation, as opposed to, something that is already, a fact, a done deal, something that we know concretely is actually happening.
All right.
We don't know why the American ambassador chose the route, that he did choose, when clearly he's got avenues, to pursue. But which would rather be focusing, on the development agenda of South Africa and the BRICS bloc, and the whole of other countries to join and the global South for development, rather than things really are not there.
All right, Kobus, thank you very much indeed. Freeman, let's try to you, and if we have time, Billy, you can get a second bite. Freeman?
There's no time, but what I wanted to say is that, South Africa, especially African leaders, when is the time going to come when they are used as the ping pong? All African leaders are used by everybody, Asia, America, Europe, as ping pongs. Fact of the matter is there's no smoke without fire. If it comes from ANC, you must know that ANC has sold weapons to Russia. And my guess is that they've also sold technology. The fact of the matter is that as a country, our sovereignty, everything is gone because of a relationship which started years ago between ANC, not South Africa, ANC and Russia. Fact of the matter is, if the USA's ambassador says there's something, believe me, the CIA has given him a go-ahead to tell this.
Interesting.
Biden in the White House has given a go-ahead to say this.
I got the gist, though, but it's interesting allegations. We'll see how it unfolds. This independent inquiry coming up, Billy. Unfortunately, in my ear, if you could only hear my producers, we have to wrap the show. Thank you, though, for all of you for your contributions. Value add indeed. No doubt we'll explore other avenues as the days come. Thank you very much indeed for you watching tonight. But before we go, here's my take. South Africa is free to choose who it wants to associate with, right? This country is free to choose who it partners up with economically and diplomatically. But the flip side to that is those countries who hold the power economically and have major influence on the world stage can do the same. So the question becomes, who needs who more? And part of the calculus in getting to that answer must factor in the direct benefit to ordinary citizens like you and me. You know, I always talk about qualities that our leaders need to possess. It's consistency and accountability paired with humility that makes a great leader. Now think about it. Who often embodies all these traits? It's your mother, right? A person who dedicates their whole life to ensuring that you have a good life. And in a lot of ways, mums symbolize the promise of what this country can be, more loving. They often live their faith, and that's a blessing to all those who come into contact with them. And if your mum is not with you anymore, I pray that you find comfort in the happy memories you once shared. May your pain and your happiness coexist in comforting harmony. Because it's okay not to be okay, as the song goes, on days like today. So from all of us here at It's Topical, happy Mother's Day. If you missed anything, be sure to watch this episode of It's Topical on YouTube. Sports Live up next. If you're watching a repeat of this program, then the news, as always, continues. Until next week, my brothers and sisters, take care. Bye-bye.